there really are no limits to what we can accomplish if we make the right choices and use our time wisely. And that's something I had to learn myself. So that's kind of like uncorking your potential is the way I would say it, is like, don't put limitations on yourself. Realize that your full potential is much higher than what you personally think it is in most cases for most people.
Hey, what's up? Welcome to the Lifeonaires Show. I'm your host, Jason Wojo. On the Lifeonaires Show, we help people make more, work less, and live better. I am joined by my illustrious, loyal, entertaining co-host, Polish.
Don't stop.
Peter.
Keep going. Come on, don't stop.
I use every positive word I could think of, man.
That's all you got? Just 3-4 words?
I mean, I struggled.
You struggled, okay. Well, listen, on that note, I will acknowledge you. Your background is looking good. I mean, your videos, like you're stepping up the game.
We're moving
here,
it up. We're moving up the game, man. And there is a financial investment in making these kinds of technology changes, which is a great, is a good thing, because we are talking about finances on this episode, and we're going to talk about the Millionaire Choice. We have Tony Bradshaw on the episode. And here's a guy, and you're going to love his story. I don't want to give it away. That had a tremendous journey financially, who put together some principles, who really aligned himself with God, who made some changes and loves helping other people do this as well, man. And so we dive in on all that stuff.
Yeah. So I will encourage you guys to go listen to it and see, like, he shares a lot of stories of different people, which is actually, I think stories are very powerful. So just look and see what kind of a story that you can pull on, because I think every single one of us can find yourselves in those stories. I did when I was listening to him talk. So I encourage you to listen to it and see how it can apply to you and what you can do with it to move forward in your life.
Let's jump into it right now, man. Tony Bradshaw, here we go. Hey, Tony, what's up, man? Welcome to the Lifeonaires Show.
Hey, Jason, thanks for having me on.
I am super excited, man. You came as a strong recommendation from Steve Cook. That you guys had a conversation, and he was really impressed, man. And he's like, "You got to get this guy in the Lifeonaires Show."
Well, I hope I can live up to his expectations. He said, I like the lower expectations so that you can exceed them. When they get set high, it's
I'm with you. Yeah. Now the pressure's on, man. Everybody expects this to be like groundbreaking, and it is going to be, and that's why we're here. Well, listen, man, I love what you've done. I want to get into that, but give us some context before we even get into this. So you have a book out that I absolutely love the principles. It teaches 10 key principles of becoming and staying a millionaire. But what actually caused you to be inspired to even write that book to begin with?
Yeah, I mean, the short version is I grew up in a broke family doing broke stuff with money, just a little bit there. Our power got cut off, our water would get cut off, this is kind of gross. I really don't tell this story. I told it to my son the other day because he and I got in a fight about some things. So I'm like, dude, you grew up so spoiled. Like, you have no idea. Let me tell you some stories that I didn't tell you before. I didn't tell you about my 6'5" friend that walked through the back door and fell through the floor because the floor was rotted. I didn't tell you about the time that the multiple times we would go on vacations to go camping, and we would fog our house before we left because we had so many roaches in the house that we had killed bugs off. And we would come back and have, hundreds, if not thousands of little bugs all over the place. We had to clean them up. Like, that's where I grew up, and my parents did buy me a lot better than they had done for them. They both came from broken homes. And so they did not have any spiritual leadership in their life. They did not have any parental leadership in their life, really. They were just, in households that were trying to exist. And so they did much better for me than they had done for them. And I am very thankful for what my parents did for me. They gave me a safe, happy home. They gave me good leadership as far as, they worked very, very hard. There were weeks my mom would work 100 hours a week to pay the bills. My dad sometimes only made about $7,000 a year. I still remember going down to the trash barrel, where they burn trash when the guys are on strike and they've got a trash barrel out burning to stay warm around the strike line. I still remember doing that as a kid. When my dad worked for Nashville Bridge Company here in Nashville, and then he worked for Wright Industries, and then stabilized a little bit when he became a carpenter and a contractor. Things work got a little bit more consistent. But that was the house I grew up in. So small wonder when I was 25 years old and I was, got my first W-2 out of college, And I looked at my pay stub and I'm like, I made $39,000 last year. I'm like, how in the world did I make 39 grand? Which prior to that, I think the most money I ever made is like $5,000 in 1 year. So to see 39 grand, I'm like, where did it all go? Because I probably had about $500 in the bank. I had a lot of electronics in my studio bedroom apartment, living at home with my mom and dad. I had a great deal with I got along very well with my parents, right? And they didn't charge me a lot of rent. I think I offered to pay $400 a month in rent, and they asked for $200. They said, no, we don't need $400, just pay for your food. And that was a great arrangement, man. I got to spend some quality time with my parents for a while, but that money had just vaporized. I was $16,000 in debt, but I had made 39 grand. So that's about $55,000 move in the wrong direction. And I'm like, something has got to change. Like this math did not work for me. And, I went to school for engineering. And so math came very naturally to me. And so I decided that what happened that year could never happen again. I went to the store and started doing what I knew to do, which is learn. I just learned. That's what I learned. If I learned anything in college, it was how to learn, right? That was the best thing I got out of college, was become a student, learn new things. And I had been doing that since I was a kid, going to my mom's convenience store. She had magazine racks. So I was trapped at the convenience store all the time because I wasn't old enough to be at home by myself. And so I would just sit around and read magazines. I'd read fishing magazines, learned how to bass fish, taught my neighborhood friends how to bass fish. I learned how to work on cars, rebuilt my first car engine when I was like 14, 15 years old. Wow. And that's what I learned to do. So when I ran into money problems, I'm like, how do you solve your problems? I'm like, I need to learn about money because obviously I don't know anything about it. And so I started studying about investing and debt and some of those kinds of things. Got Kiplinger's magazine, Smart Money magazine, probably picked up a few other things. And then put together what I call a millionaire plan. I did what I call my Millionaire Choice, made my Millionaire Choice, created my millionaire plan, which was my plan to become a millionaire by age 40. That's when I thought I could do it. And this was, 25 years old, armed with the basics, right? So, obviously I didn't know a whole lot at 25, but I knew enough to believe that I could do it. And that's the goal that I set out on. So fast forward a little bit, I spent some time at Dave Ramsey's working from 2001 to 2016. And then I left in 2016. 2017 was when I felt like the Holy Spirit dropped this book on my lap. And there's a lot more to that story. But yeah, the book concept came to me all based on that history that I had. I never knew that I would be back in personal finance after leaving Dave Ramsey's organization. But that's where the Lord takes you on a weird journey sometimes. And that's where I'm at. Just trying to help people do the same things I did at 25, which was make the millionaire choice, create their millionaire plan. And as I mentioned before, develop a purpose for wealth, a purpose for the wealth, the money that they're making, a purpose for their work, because those are things that came to me later in life after the millionaire plan came to me.
Do you think that anyone can be a millionaire? Because you mentioned, especially...
I believe anyone. Yeah, I do believe that. And I do believe that it's going to be harder for some people than others, but it is doable. And the reason I believe that is because I've interviewed about 120 millionaires for my show, The Millionaire Choice. And I've talked to people who grew up or spent 3 years in Chinese concentration camps as teenagers. And literally 20 million kids got thrown into Chinese concentration camps. This guy was one of them, Dr. Ming Wang. And he got out of the Chinese concentration camp. And then he had to study to get into college. And he had 1 year to study 4 years of high school. And he did it. His parents, I think if I remember correctly, he was sleeping about 6 hours a day and studying and taking tests for 18 hours a day. And his parents were doing all this for him. And he got into college, and then he met a missionary that said, hey, you need to make it to America. And the guy bought him a ticket to America and gave him $50. So he came to America with $50 in his pocket as a Chinese, leaving the system over there. And they came over here, and he's a millionaire. I've got others that grew up in drug-infested neighborhoods, watching people in their neighborhood get gunned down, like literally crawling down the street, getting shot in the back while they were trying to survive. And then they're like, man, I got to get out of here. I can't live in this place. I got to get it. And then boom, they become a millionaire. And some of these dudes are doing it by age 30. I didn't do it till age 40, but that's where they're at. Single girls that grew up in single mom homes, Kelly Hollingsworth. I mean, I could tell you hundreds of these stories. And it's very inspiring stuff. But yeah, I do believe that. It is harder for some people than others, though.
So talk to me why the millionaire's choice? Like, talk about the choice component of that. Like, what drew you to that term, and why is that so important?
Yeah, the original name, which I'm not going to give it away, the original concept for that really started as a children's book. and was the concept, because I realized I don't want to be a financial guy like all the other financial guys that are just out there teaching about money. There's enough of us. I don't want to be another, same cloth kind of guy, the same stuff. There's plenty of other people doing it. What's my angle? What do I need to do? And I'm really about the system. Like, I really want to turn the system upside down. I don't want 70% of people living paycheck to paycheck, but maybe worth, $500 million or $1 billion. Like, that's not the recipe for success for me. I want to be one of the people that goes, hey, we can make a better system. Like, the system we have today does not really reach out to everybody and try to help everybody. Like, capitalism is not a bad system. I think what we're living in today is a corrupt capitalist system. The original capitalistic system is not the same as what we have today. It's a different flavor. But the original name, I'm tempted to say it, but it was about the idea of planting a seed of hope in a child's heart at age 5, 6, or 7, that they could grow up and be different, that they could grow up and build wealth. Okay. So when the Holy Spirit dropped this book on me, I originally was going to name it the children's book name, but then I'm like, no, it's not supposed to be a children's book. It's supposed to be an adult book. And then a friend of mine convinced me to make it a choice, because choices are empowering. And that's really what it comes down to, right? The building wealth is really just a system, Jason. And that's the beautiful thing about it, is that once you learn the system, anybody can do it, man. Like, anybody can do it. It's the system. And it's, you have to back with behavior patterns and stuff like that, but it's repeatable. Systems are repeatable. And that's where the illusion gets kind of, vaporized, so to speak. A lot of people think it's just magic. It's not. It's just a system. I work the system. Some people work the system better than me, and they have a lot more money. I've got a friend, Jeremy Newsom. He's 35 years old, millionaire, got his own island in the British Virgin Islands. 35 years old, grew up in a broke family, not very different than mine, but he just got started a little bit sooner. He got a little more aggressive.
Got it. So you're keeping me at suspense here, man. So what is that system that you got going on, man? Where is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's well,
it's in the book, Peter. You got to read the book.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's the simple steps there. Yeah. The system, you guys know it. I mean, it's like, debt, people use debt, they get put into debt. So you have to grow your income. You have to pay attention to your income. How can I say this? I thought $39,000 was a lot of money when I was 25, because I was making more money than my mom, and my mom had been working for 20 years. I thought I was like, I had a ride. Yeah. Like, I'm like, man, I just got out of college. I'm in the game. I'm making 39 grand this year, and my mom's making 35. I'm already at, she's been at this for 20 plus years, and I'm already ahead of her. Like, I got this figured out. What I realized is that's a limit that we put on ourselves. There really are no limits to what we can accomplish if we make the right choices and use our time wisely. And that's something I had to learn myself. So that's kind of like uncorking your potential, is the way I would say it. Is like, don't put limitations on yourself. Realize that your full potential is much higher than what you personally think it is, in most cases, for most people. But we get stuck in this kind of gerbil wheel where we just, get trained. And I'm sure my 15-year-old daughter, Polish, explained this to me. She's like, because they're hearing this stuff from me all the time, right? So she says, have you seen this picture, Dad, of the telephone? Like, in the last 100 years, the telephone is changed drastically, from this device to this, little thing we handle hands. She said, cars, look how much cars have changed in 100 years. She's like, you know what hasn't changed? The classroom, the place where the children are taught. It still looks the same. It still functions basically the same. There's not any change in it. So in today's world, it's changing a little bit now because of Zoom and virtual and YouTube and stuff like that. But the classroom itself isn't really changing, but the way people are learning is changing. You see, because the old system doesn't really want to change. They want to keep shoving kids into a box, teaching them skills that they, are not very useful to them. So like, that's something you got to learn right away. When you talk about a system, is people who build wealth, they operate outside the system. They don't look to the system to mentor, guide them, direct them. They actually look for other mentors that exist outside of this system. And I'll give you a great example. I've got 6 kids, right? I don't know if you knew that, Jason.
Man,
wow.
Yeah. So I didn't plan on 6. I tried to get my wife to stop at 3. She wanted 4. We had 4. And then I felt like we were supposed to have 5 and 6, and we do. And they're amazing. But I've got my oldest daughter. She's terrible at math. Like, terrible. I don't know if you guys have ever met somebody who's bad at math. My wife is bad at math, right? My daughters, they're very similar people. Why in the world is she having to take 12 years of math, like advanced math in school? Like probably could have stopped at age 8. I mean, grade 8, 8th grade, and never learned any more math. And that's not helping her at all. Right. So why is she being forced to learn something that is not even useful to her? Why didn't they, on the other hand, here you go. Why didn't they spend 12 years teaching people about money and business? Because money and business is going to go with everyone for their entire livelihood, like everywhere, right? But math, it's going to cap out pretty quick, right? With what you actually have to do in society to exist. Unless you're an engineer like me or an architect like my other son, we do need the math. But for the average person, they don't need the math, right?
Right.
So that's part of the system is, I call that getting money smart. That's millionaire key number 3. You've got to think about your education the same way, if you're going to study money, you got to study money just like you did math, English, and science for 12 years. You can't expect to be good with money unless you study it. You have to become a student of it. And that's the system, right? When you think about Warren Buffett or Bill Gates or any of these guys, Nancy Pelosi even, she's got a little bit extra trading because she did a little insider trading. So she's got a little extra repertoire for her gifts. But for the average person, it is really about like, hey, I need to spend time doing this. Like, no wonder I'm spending all my money. It's the same thing I did as a 25. So that's the first step. There's a lot more we can talk about, but some of it's basic stuff, but that's where I started, is get money smart.
Well, man, so one thing that you said, you had a goal to becoming a millionaire by 40. And what I want to point out is that is and by the way, when I asked if everybody could become a millionaire, like, sure, if you're 18 years old and you start socking away money into a Roth IRA and put in the S&P, whatever, when you're 60, whatever, you could have a sizable amount of money. But that's not what you're talking about, because you're talking about becoming wealthy and financially free at a much younger age. And the examples you've given have also been of a similar sort. And so is there a common thread among the ways that people are generating this kind of money that you see, number one? And number two, I'm also curious, this is kind of a follow-up question, is from your experience and your bio, I know that things like your faith, your family, these other parts other than just money are also important to you. And so can someone become a millionaire and have the life they want to live that focuses on all things that are important to them as well at the same time?
Yeah, I think those are some complex questions. In answer to your first question, I asked at one of my recent events, Purpose of Wealth. I had a new speaker there. His name's Taylor Welch. He's a young millionaire. He's in his 30s, like 34, I think, maybe 33. And he's grew a business to like $70 million. But when you hear his story, he was cleaning windows at his future wife, because he was trying to court her beauty salon, right? And he's like, man, this woman's got her own business. Like, how am I going to court her? Like, he's all interested in her. So he didn't know anything. He's a window cleaner, right? So he started learning a little bit about marketing, and he started doing direct mail marketing for her. And before you know it, he bought this list, sent out these mail things. All of a sudden, they got 1 lead, 2 leads, 3 leads. Next thing you know, her business is starting to blow up. He's like, hey, I'm onto something here. I can make this work. So he learned in that model how to do marketing and grow a business. And then he was able to, exponentially grow that. So he grew, I think, his business up to about $70 million or something like that in his 30s. So he went the business route. But you got to go back to the root of the story. The root of the story, he was a window cleaner, and he didn't know how to do anything. Same thing with me. Look at me. I went to school for engineering, and I didn't know anything about money, so I spent all my money, right? That's what I did. So that's where everybody pretty much starts that I interview and talk to, is they start in a very similar fabric. I think 80% of the millionaires in the USA are first generation millionaires, means that they came from families that didn't have money. A lot of people believe, oh, you millionaires got lucky, or you inherited money. It's just not true. It's not true. The stories are all very, very similar. And I hope you don't mind me sharing all these, because I got so many, and they're so inspirational to me. But, Jerry Feta, he's a friend of mine, was on my show, maybe like episode 80. Jerry was homeless at age 6, living in tents with his dad. His parents were going through a divorce, and he thought he was just camping with his dad, right? So then he goes, after his 3 months with his dad in a tent, then he goes and stays with his mom in a camper in a friend's backyard with no power, no water, pooping and peeing. in like Folgers-sized coffee cans. You remember the Folgers coffee cans? They're pretty big cans, yeah. And that worked pretty well until they accidentally spilled the can in the trailer. And then the owner and the guy, the house said, hey, you guys need to come inside. This isn't good for you to be outside living in this trailer. Let's bring you inside. So he was homeless at age 6, 7, 8, then got married at age 19. And 6 months after he got married, he was homeless again. And ended up living in a person's house that had let him live there. Just there's a story. I don't want to give it all away. Go listen to the episode. But that moment at 19, when he had to confront his homelessness with his new wife, a 6 months old wife. She wasn't 6 months old. They've been married for 6 months. He said, I can't do this again. I got to stop this. I got to break the cycle. So that's the moment, right, where he broke the cycle. And he's a millionaire, multimillionaire at age 30, right? So we all had to go through the same story. It's like, hey, we have to make a decision, a choice. We have to get money smart. We have to take the time to learn, right? We have to do that. And then we have to put into action what we learn. And then on my show, what you were saying earlier is what I found is there are dozens of paths to wealth, literally dozens, right? Some people use the stock market. Some people do, small business like Taylor, who I mentioned earlier. Others do real estate. Real estate's a really good one to go do. It's it's probably created the largest number of millionaires per capita, just because it's a repeatable process. It's a repeatable system once you learn it. But that's the path is, find one of these things and then get to know it and apply it to yourself. The other thing I would say, and this is millionaire key number 4, is find a money mentor. Hang out with people that are going where you want to go. Like in my case, I wanted to become a millionaire, and I was very fortunate to work for the Dave Ramsey organization. So I hung out with a bunch of people who were all becoming millionaires for 15 years, right? So what that helped me with is to get my head in the right space so that I didn't get off track, right? I didn't go chasing things that I shouldn't be chasing, whether that's a boat or a car or, luxury vacations or whatever. But it kept me on track going, hey, I managed my money well. As Dave teaches, stay out of debt. So I stayed out of debt. I'm an anti-debt guy. I'm in a little bit of debt now, unfortunately, but I was debt-free since, paid my first house off in 2009. I take that back. 2007, went back into debt 2009 for the house I'm in now, paid it off in 2012, and then was debt-free from 2012 up to about 2 years ago when I bought a farmhouse, right? So I'm getting another property. But the processes are the same.
Hey guys, we get right back to our episode, but there's something really important I want to tell you about, and that is this. You don't have to choose between having a great life and a great business. You can have both. We have 2 different events, in fact, to help you do just that. Our Get a Life Getaway is our proven process. We've been doing this over just about 15 years now of walking you through the process of creating your own personal life vision, your life inner vision for the ideal life that you want to live. And by the way, this isn't pie in the sky approach to living. This is a tangible, strategic way to really figure out exactly what you have to do and what things have to be in place for you to live that vision, and so that you can make this a reality. Now, the second part of that component is, the second part of the formula is the Business Builder Workshop. So this is where now finally you can have a business that doesn't absolutely destroy your life, and you can make the money you want in the amount of time you want. You can have fun. It can fulfill vision element items. You can remove yourself from the day-to-day and the minutia, so you're only doing the things that are most enjoyable to you and that you're best at, right? Can you imagine what that would be like to get to enjoy and wake up every day loving what you get to do in your business and making money hand over fist? Like, that's just an amazing combination. So I want to encourage you to go to the Get a Life Getaway and the Business Builder Workshop, because they're really a 1-2 punch combination to help you get the ideal life and business that you dream about. Now, here's the even cooler part, Peter. We have a very special promo for them. Tell them about that.
Well, because you guys are a loyal listener, because you're listening to our podcast and listen to my English and his English all the time, here's what we have for you guys. Head over to lifeonaires.com, click on the events tab at the top of the page, pick the event that you want to go to the checkout page, and in the promo code area, type in podcast, 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 hit apply, and guess what you're going to get? You're going to get 50% off. That's 50% of the ticket price, the regular ticket price, that majority of the people out there who don't listen to our podcast don't know about it yet. Get to pay, but you get to pay only 50% off. So head over there right now, get to this event, and I can't wait to meet you. Come up to us, say hi to us, introduce yourself, Tell us you found us on the podcast. We would love to talk to you and show you how this vision process really creates miracles in people's lives.
Man, one last thing is, I don't know when you're listening to this episode right now, but I don't know how long we're going to keep this discount up. I don't know how long this promotion will be valid. So go and do it right now to make sure you get that 50% savings. We'll see you at an event soon. Let's get back to the episode. Talk about the balance that somebody has to go through. Like if you make a choice to be a millionaire, can you also have the things that are also important to you, like faith, family, these other parts? Or do you see a lot of conflict between those two goals? Yeah.
I think let's talk about that. Chop that up in a couple different pieces. One, let's start with the wife, right? Because I've been married 25 years. Give me some applause, please. Right?
Yeah, well deserved. Woo!
Yeah, man, that's awesome, especially in today's world.
Yeah, and hard fought, but hard fought for my wife. By my wife, I was a screw up, and she fixed me. But yeah, she fixed me. Yeah, she didn't want to give up. 25 years of working on me, she didn't want to give me up. But the concept there is you need to be in unity, right? And this is something I've been talking to my wife more lately about, because even though we built wealth, we were very similar because she had been through Dave Ramsey's program and I was working for her, so we were very anti-debt people. So we did not have spending problems. But we really weren't in unity, right, with our finances. So when I walked in and told her at age 40, I'm like, hey, babe, we're millionaires. She was like, what are you talking about? She's feeding a baby. And she has no idea, because I never shared with her my vision, because my vision was created 3 years before she came into the picture, because I created my vision to be a millionaire at age 25, never really shared it with her. And we got married at 28. So, and here I was, hit this milestone, and she didn't even know she was on the ride. She was just like living her day-to-day life. And so now in this next version of where we are, I'm like, hey, we need to be in unity, babe. Like we need to work to be in unity. We haven't figured out how to be in unity with our financial vision and where we want to go. We have similar direction we want to go, but what does it mean to have true unity with your spouse about your finances? I don't have all that figured out, but I can tell you what we're working on. We're working on doing family meetings where we talk about money. We do that. We're trying to do that weekly. I grew up in, both of my parents did not have strong family lives, so they did not really do that particularly well. So I just became a product of my parents, and therefore I don't have some of those things figured out, right? I don't have that unity thing quite figured out. So we're working on that, working on it with kids. So, the weekly budget meeting is a thing that is important, but also not just that, weekly vision meeting, right? I've got a vision board sitting over here behind the monitor. We put stuff up on there that we want to accomplish together. We feel like there are things that God wants us to go do. All right. So that's the marital side of it, is work really hard at creating unity. When I give people my book, if they're a married couple, I give them 2 copies. Why do I give them 2 copies? Because I know that if the husband reads it, he's going to be talking to his wife about it, and he's just going to be feeding her information. And it's very difficult to listen to somebody and attach yourself to kind of what they're telling you, because you're getting it secondhand. If I give it to the wife, same thing's going to happen. So I give it to them both and say, hey, read this together and process it together, because that's going to give you unity, because you're going to be in the same headspace. You're going to be thinking of the same things at the same time with the same information, probably processing it a little bit differently, but it's going to help you create unity on where you can go. And I don't know if that was a genius thing or not, but this couple got out behind me at Tzatziki's. If you guys have Tzatziki's where you're at, it's a Greek restaurant. Mm-hmm. And I was in my Jeep, popped out of my Jeep, have a bumper sticker on my Jeep, says, make the choice, create your plan, the millionairechoice.com. This young couple gets out of their Jeep. They pulled out behind me, and they look at me, and my book's probably been out for a little while. And they jump out, young couple, 25, 26 years old, and they go, hey, I talked to him about Jeep, did you take Jeep off-roading, all this kind of stuff. And they look at me and they say, no, we haven't had off-roading yet. And I'm like, well, make sure you get a winch before you do, because I almost got stuck twice taking my Jeep out in the woods. And I'm not going back out till I get a winch on it. And then they asked me something that surprised me. And this is how good God is to us, right? When you got self-doubt and things going on, which is where I am sometimes. And this young couple looks at my bumper sticker and goes, hey, is that your book? And I'm like, well, actually it is. And they're like, we were just looking at it on Amazon, driving into this parking lot.
Wow.
And I said,
that's cool, man.
Yeah. And they're like, we just got married. I'm like, would you like a copy? And I got to talk to them about money, and they just got married, been married like 6 months. And I got to share that with them. So that's the money side. All right. Now you go to the faith side. This is an interesting one because I just released an article about this. And I would encourage you to go read it, Jason. I'd love your feedback on it. Post a comment on it, right? It's on my blog. And it's basically about this. Why do preachers ask for money from their churchgoers, but never teach them how to manage their money? That's a heavy question, right? Because it happens every Sunday. It happens. Every Sunday it happens. Over 300,000, I think, churches in America or something, maybe more than that, right? Happens every Sunday. My preacher, I couldn't tell you the last time I've heard a financial message at the church I've gone to. I've been going there since 2007, right? So, and here's the simple answer. The preachers, the pastors don't know how to manage money. So they can't teach what they don't know. Do you know there's I think it's 2,500 Bible verses on the subject of money? It's the most talked about. I think it's the most talked about topic in the Bible, but it's the least talked about in the church, right? Well, actually, in some churches, Jesus is the least talked about thing nowadays, which is sad. But that's a core. So there's a, and I believe it's an enemy's attack on money, because the enemy right now would control. I would tell you they control the money system, right? And when you look at the things that are going on in the world, a lot of it goes back to money and the corruption of the money system, the corruption of money in general, how it's been used and in an erroneous way. That's why I put together the Purpose of Wealth events, because I think people need to go through this process. You know, tithing in the church is like the basics, right? That's like baseline. I've started teaching this 3-level kind of thing of finances, and it goes like this. There's tithing, and then above tithing, when you have a little bit of money, if you're tithing, you're being faithful. And then you get to testing, which is when I started making more money and getting more wealth. I started getting tested. Like God started knocking on my heart saying, hey, I want you to give this pastor some money. And then I would pray like, okay, what am I supposed to give him? And I asked my wife, what do you think? And we started writing $10,000 checks and then $20,000 checks. And the numbers just kept going up. As my income went up, my checks that Lord tested me on kept going up. And then after you get through tithing and testing, and this is where I'm at now, it comes down to purpose. Like, why do I actually get up and go to work every day? And then why do I actually build wealth? It's not that like God's just pouring all this blessing in you, because I guarantee if he's giving you the blessing, he's going to come asking for it later, because it's really his money, and that's how you have to look at it. But where's the purpose? And this is where I tie it back to why I'm doing these Purpose of Wealth events. There are 4.8 million children, and primarily children and women, caught in sex trafficking trade across the planet. Think about that for a minute. 4.8 million. There's, I think it's 45 million actual labor slaves across the planet right now. 45 million. Today, 2023, there are more slaves on this planet than have ever existed in history right now. And people don't know that, right? When you get into hunger, like world hunger, there's something like 900 million people that will go hungry on the planet today, roughly about 1/7 of the population, right around that number, that will go hungry today. In the U.S., the numbers are huge, just even in the U.S., right? And we're the first, the richest country on the planet. Then you get into orphans, 147 million plus orphans. Like, you can just keep stacking up these problems, right, like crazy, water, right? So I've kind of tipped over the edge, and I think this is where God's got me these days. And what I'm trying to share with people is once you conquer tithing and you're faithful in your tithing, then you kind of unlock the possibility of spiritual blessing and wealth. And this is different than prosperity gospel. It's going, okay, God gave me more money. Now I have it. He's going to ask for it. Like, I can guarantee you that's going to happen. And then I saw my income go up and up and up and up, way beyond where I'd ever expected. But now I'm in this place where I'm going, why do I actually need wealth? And for me, I'm like, I want as much money as I can make, as much wealth as I create, because of these problems are so big. Because my heart is finally in a place where I can go, I know what I'm going to do with the money. The money doesn't have the power over me. Now, I don't really ever think it did, but at the same time, you don't know your true self. Dave Ramsey has a saying, I don't know if it's his or somebody else's, but money doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you more of who you really are.
Yep.
And so, and God's not going to give you something. I'm of the opinion God's not going to give you something if it's going to hurt or destroy you. Like a dad, you would never give something to your kids that would hurt them, right? You would never do that. And God's the same way. He's never going to give us something. So if we can't conquer this concept of money, then God can't really bless us with wealth. It's not that we earned it or we deserve it or anything like that. It's that God will not give us something that's going to hurt us, damage our families, or any of those kinds of things. I'm sorry, I got a little long-winded on that one, Jason.
No, man, I love that. I think it's fantastic. And actually that you kind of opened up something for me that I want to kind of explore a little bit. That is not the direction I had planned on going, but I think it's valuable here is like, what I'm hearing is that really a component of you being successful financially it's an obligation of sorts, and I'm thinking of, to whom much is given, much is required. Right. And so, in addition to developing these skills, the keys that you've isolated, we have almost half of those are character traits, and the other half are kind of the tactical kind of things that you're going to do. But above that, like covering that is your faith really, and probably being in alignment with your creator in a way that's going to kind of bless you so that you can bless others. And so for somebody, but I also see, how does somebody kind of come to a comfort level with that, where they feel like, they struggle with feeling like, gosh, like, money is going to be my idol, or money's evil, or money is, and they don't see the positive impacts that it can make that you've talked about. Like, how does somebody come to grips with that? Like, are they okay to pray for wealth, like, and to pursue that? Or is there something there that they are going to struggle with?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit different because we're all on our different journeys. But I can tell you, like, when I became a Christian at age 9, one of the first things I did, the song, I Surrender All. Oh, I surrender all. Like, you get these songs in your head and there's spiritual meaning behind them. Some people just sing them, but for me as a kid, I'm like, man, I surrender, Lord. Like, everything I do, I just want to proclaim your glory from the highest mountains top that you'll give me. Let me do that. Like, whatever I do, I want yours. So I started praying for my spouse at, like, I don't know, probably like 3rd grade, 4th grade. And I didn't kiss my first girl till I was like 23 years old. And I didn't know what I was doing on honeymoon night. I was clueless. Right?
Where's the manual?
Yeah, I did not have it figured out. And so I think that's your first key, is like, you have to walk out your faith in a safe way with money, and to uncork really your full potential. Like, what is God's plan? Now, sidestep here for a second. I do believe there are people, I think this is biblical, people that are absolutely anointed for wealth. Like, you look at David Green or Truett Cathy of Chick-fil-A, those guys, like billionaires, right? There are people that are anointed for wealth, but you look at their heart, right? Like, God's not going to bless them in his spiritual kingdom unless they can handle it. And I do think there are people who are not meant to ever have wealth. Like, I do believe that. I believe there's two spectrums there. But I also believe there's this gray area in between where you get to choose. And the choices become like, okay, am I prepared to receive the blessings that God has for me? Like, because if you can't handle the blessings, then he can't give it to you, right? And that comes down to your character. That comes down to your walk with God. It comes down to your family. Are you stewarding your family well? The fastest way to lose half your wealth, even once you build it, is to go through a divorce, right? Wreck your marriage, right? So what's more important? If you had $5 million, you get divorced, you got 2.5. If you got 10, you got 5, right? If you're lucky, right? Because usually the guy's the one screwing it up. And so you're in it with 40%. She's going to get 60. All right. And that's just a fact, that the way that plays out. So the Bible, the verse that often gets misquoted, and I'm sure you guys know this, but, and I forget the scriptural reference, but the scripture reference is people misquote is money is the root of all evil, which is not true. It's for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And I would say that's true. It's 100% true. And we don't have time to go into all that today, but it is a reality. So you have to get your heart right with the Lord first. And then inside of that, you have to do the work that goes along with it. That's the get money smart. That's the other stuff. Now, I will say, I personally believe that the enemy that we exist and God tells us, like, we're fighting a spiritual warfare where it's a real thing, right? And if you're faith-based. Now, some Christians, once you become a Christian, you're actually stepping into God's kingdom, and then you're shielded from the other kingdom. Like, you're shielded from the enemy to some extent, unless you make some bad decisions, you took yourself out from under God's protection. there's a possibility of that. So you're a little bit shielded from what's really going on in the world. And that can give you this false sense of security. You just don't have the right perspective, right? That you're living in a warfare, and the Bible talks about that. And it's real. But unfortunately, a lot of our Christian brothers and sisters are asleep and they're not activated. So if you knew you were in a war, wouldn't you act differently? Wouldn't you do things a little bit differently? So the enemy has almost lulled us into a sense of sleepiness to where we're not as active as Christians as we probably should be. So I think this is probably what I feel like the Lord's telling me to share with your audience today, right now. And this is something I've been working through myself. When you look back in Genesis, what did God say to Adam? He said, take dominion over the planet, right? So God anointed Adam to have dominion over the planet. And then what did you see happen pretty quickly after that? You saw Satan come in and start to usurp that dominion or authority that God gave to Adam over the planet. And that's what we've been dealing with for thousands of years now, because of that enemy that's in place trying to usurp the authority that God gave Adam and reestablish through Christ, right? That's what Christ is. He's reestablishing the authority that God gave to man over this planet, right? And you can study this stuff. I've got a guy I'm listening to right now called Timothy Alberino. I highly recommend you guys listen to him. I read the first few pages of his book called Birthright, and he talks about all this stuff from a biblical perspective, and some of it will blow your mind. And but he talks more in the first 2 pages or 3 pages about Jesus and Jesus's authority and the whole God's design better than probably any pastor I've ever heard. It's very, very powerful. Okay. So where I tie that back to money is this: the enemy has taken dominion over the money system. That's just a fact. Okay. So we as Christians have abdicated the dominion and authority that God has asked us to have over this planet. That's the way I see things. And when you go why is abortion running rampant? You hear Christians cry and run about that all the time. Abortion, hot topic, right? You can go back, study Moloch, all this kind of stuff. It's all tied back to that. But it's there because we're not taking dominion over the financial system. We're not taking dominion over the planet. We're not doing the things that we should be doing as Christians. I hope I answered your question there, Jason. I mean, my opinions there are a little bit stronger today than they were 3 or 4 or 5 years ago.
Well, man, what I'm hearing is, and this is a broad generalization and a summary, is that we have to take our responsibility over the parts that we can control, and with that guidance and prayerful kind of connection with God, when you combine those two together, now we have a chance of doing something good. But it's not going to happen individually. And so, if you're not in full alignment with God, you are unlikely to achieve any kind of really lasting, at least in an eternal impacting way, success where you can help others. But you also have to do your part too. It sounds like, so you have to learn, you have to grow, you have to develop these principles and learn the system for making money. Because listen, if the good guys don't have the money, who has it, right? The bad guys. And so we can do a lot with this. And so this is where I kind of said earlier, there's almost an ethical or even a spiritual responsibility to explore this and to take responsibility and to do something special with it, man. And that's I think a powerful lesson to kind of comprehend and really internalize.
Yeah, you're spot on. I think you said it a lot more eloquently than I did. And
yeah, right.
It's a fact. I mean, and I think I was not aware of the warfare. I grew up Christian school and they always preaching about it. Ephesians, put on the whole armor of God so that you can stand. I can recite a lot of the verses, but I never really understood how it was manifested in the physical realm. And that's something that's kind of newer to me because I have lived a sheltered life, 12 years in, went through 12th grade in Christian school, went to college in Christian school, got out, spent 6 years in a non-Christian environment, but went back into Christian environment for 15 years. So I'm pretty sheltered, right? I'm pretty sheltered when it comes to that. But now the last 7 years, I've just been learning, and this is where God's had me because I'm like, oh, there is some really bad stuff going on. And I was clueless, virtually clueless, and I'm not clueless anymore. And that's what I would encourage everybody to kind of look at your own life and go, you know what? See what God has planned for you. You know, wake up every day and go, God, what do you want me to do today? Who do you want me to connect with? Who do you want me to lift up? How can I walk in the power of your spirit and what you have for me? Like the fullness of what God's plan is. That is the key. Like if you ask me, like, what is the secret to your mild level of success? Because I would say I'm mildly successful. I'm not like super successful yet. It would be that. It would be like going back at a young age and going, Lord, whatever you want me to do today, I want to go where you want me to go. I want to do what you want me to do, and I want to be who you want me to be. Like, and I try to wake up every day and do those three things. Some days obviously do that better than others. And then the journey he takes you on is so different than what you could ever imagine for yourself. And just crazy connections, and you're like, oh, I'm supposed to meet you today. You know, I'll tell one more story because I know we're running out of time. But I got up one morning and just felt like, hey, I need to go hiking today with my daughter, my oldest daughter. So I asked her. Normally, I expect her to say no because, you know, she's doing her thing. And she goes, I said, we want to go hiking this morning, just me and you? And she's like, yeah, sure, let's go. So then I was going to go to the woods, do a trail hike. And I'm like, you know, I think I'm going to go down to Columbia. It's a city, 45 minutes. We've got a house down there. And let's just walk the riverfront. I've been wanting to do that for a while. So we walked the riverfront, and we're get to the end of the walk there. She goes, hey, I want to go in downtown. Okay, that was on my plan, but let's go. Next thing you know, I'm standing in front of a store, meeting a couple who had a flat tire just down the street. And they were only there because they had a flat tire down the street, and they had moved here from California, like, I think less than a year ago. It's just like these crazy, and they're strong Christian believers. Just, you know, I'm like, why am I even talking to you? And now I've met this guy several times, you know, and exhorting him. And I don't even know where that relationship's going yet fully, but you just see all of these different things that happen that you can't plan for or account for, but you know they're going to happen because you're walking in the Spirit. You're walking in surrender to God with your money, with your life, with your family, with, you know, your work, like with everything. And God has a plan for you. And I think that's the biggest thing I could say to people today, especially on this show, is seek out what that plan is and surrender fully.
I love that, man. Tony, where do people find out more about what you're doing, and where can they look up?
Yeah, absolutely. Like TonyBradshaw.com is the number one spot. You get my podcast. I try to post those every week. I'm a little bit slow this week. And then newsletters there, books there. You can actually get my ebook for free. So you don't have to buy my book. You can just get it and read it, or you can just read it in a blog format, either one of those. So, but I just want to encourage everybody to make a choice and create your plan.
Love it, man. Thank you for your time and for being on the show.
Thank you too, Jason.
Wow, man, we covered a lot during that episode. We kind of took a left-hand turn there, but I mean, I just felt like that's an important component to all this, man. So I feel like we talked about some tactical stuff, some strategic stuff, but also in the principles, the keys, as he calls them, you know, the 10 keys, but also some of the spiritual components of wealth and why it's important for us to kind of look at that.
Yeah, I think one of the things I want to encourage the listeners as they're listening to this podcast, because like I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast that I found myself in a couple of these stories that he was talking about, right?
Yeah.
You know, when he was talking about how he grew up and things like that, right? I mean, some of you guys have been listening to this podcast for a while and you know my story, or you've been to one of our events. You know, I was in the communist country, 12 bottle of Rome, right? So what I want you guys to hopefully get out of this particular podcast that it's possible. Because one of the things that he brought up at the beginning that I think we really explored is that what's important is the belief in yourself that you can, in this context, become a millionaire, right?
Yeah.
And that was, I think, a big thing. And then making a choice, making a decision, you know, those different stories that he shared, that he talked about, yeah, pretty much every single one of them, there was a moment, it was a defining moment, and they made a choice. He made a choice. There was a defining moment for him. And if you think about it, man, for me, I made that choice at some point. You made that choice at some point. And now you got to create a plan to move forward with this. And I think I think a lot of people don't do that. They have these defining moments, but they're not present to them to be able to actually make those choices.
Man, and that's one of the things, like some of the big takeaways for me of this episode is, one, is really anybody can do this if you choose it. Like, I think the difference with money and something like sports is like, you have physical constraints. If you're 5'5" and 150 pounds, you are not going to be an NFL lineman. I'm sorry if that's your dream. I just burst that for you. But when it comes to money, like he mentioned, it's a system, it's a process, it's a number of key things that when you take those pieces of information and you implement it, that's the key he mentioned as well, like taking action, right? We talk about this all the time, right? You have to decide. It's a decision to take action. Like, listen, you have to decide you're going to lose weight. You have to decide you're going to focus on your relationship. You have to decide you want to accumulate wealth and become financially free. Like, so it's the action, it's the decision, it's the hope, it's the potential. And more than anything, it's also a reason why. And I think it's the vision, because like he talked about this as well. Like he talked about everything from sex trafficking to orphanage to home, like all these things that, and by the way, they are much more complicated than just fixing and throwing money at, but it ain't going to get done without any money. And so this is one way that we can help. And so when you have that why and you tie that back into your own vision, not only from a global scale, which is incredibly important, but even a local scale, like your own community or your own family or the people close to you, like that's the reason why, that gives you the motivation to take the choice, to make the actions happen and move forward. And then when you do that and you start, like when he said he made $39,000, he's like, wow, like that was his level of success. And then from there, he probably went like, hey, I wonder if I can make 70 or 100 or, and it keeps going from there. And those small successes, man, are what cumulatively give you the momentum to move forward even further. And so like it all kind of, man, I'll tell you, the more podcast episodes we do, the more patterns I see. And I think you're probably the same way, man.
Yeah. And the thing is, one of the couple other key points that I want the listeners to overlook is, that how important the why is. And towards the end of the episode, he mentioned his why has grown. It's bigger, right? When he was talking about the trafficking and all that kind of stuff. The whys are growing. And I think that's an important part of the entire process, because if you don't have that strong why to keep you moving forward, you're going to get off the that road, that plan, and then you're going to try a different shiny object or whatever the case may be, right? And the other thing that I've gotten to is importance of faith. When it comes to us Christians here, I think it's so important that, God gives you, whatever the portion that he gives you, and then what are you going to do with them when he was talking about tithing, whatever. Yeah. I think there is a fear for a lot of us to not go and, hold on to this money because what if this or what if that, whatever. There's a whole bunch of different belief systems that comes into the play. But when you start looking from that perspective, it's not your money, right? When he was talking about it, it's God's money. And he gives you, and you start to work the plan, right, that he's got for you. All of a sudden, you start to move forward, and it doesn't become this ambiguous thing that we're not familiar with. Like, it's a scary thing, I think, for a lot of people. It becomes a lot more doable kind of a thing, and it's possible for a lot of people.
Yep. Love it, man. Well, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, leave us a review, leave us a rating, give us a thumbs up, share it with somebody who needs to hear this as well, because together we are making that impact around the world. Together we can make more millionaires, more Lifeonaires, and more change for everyone and make this world a better place. All right, we're very grateful for you checking us out. We will see you next week, everyone. Take care.